Oh, hello. Welcome to the 2013 Hundie Challenge. Today we're going to be discussing Young Man Blues by Joyce DeWitt. Dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo-doo, dee-doo-dee-doo-doo, dee-doo-doo-doo-dee-doo-doo-doo. So in case you couldn't tell, this was the first book that I have read on my Kindle, or to be more accurate, my Kindle app for my iPhone. I read a couple of the Red Adept books, but I'm not really reviewing those. It's kind of a conflict of interest. You can read about that on the blog. So for this challenge and for the world, for all intents and purposes, this is the first book I've read on a Kindle. So before we get into the meat of it, and there is some meat in it, I'm going to just adjust this a little bit. Let's talk about reading on a Kindle as opposed to reading dead tree format. Without saying right off the bat which I prefer, because I still don't know that I've made a decision about that. But there are differences, and there are pros and cons to both of them. So let's not spend too much time on this, but it's kind of an interesting thing to talk about. You all are probably known this shit for 4 years, and I'm just getting on the bus. But so let's talk about it. So the pros with a Kindle is, for one thing, it's with you everywhere that you go. Like I said, I'm not carrying an actual Kindle, so I don't know how you Kindle or Nuke users, if you actually carry it everywhere you go. But I carry my iPhone everywhere I go. So it's one of those kind of things that, like, if I'm watching TV and I mute the commercial and I flip open a dead tree book and I find my place and I can read a little bit, and then I flip it closed, when the TV comes back on, I got to kind of keep my eye on the TV and all that kind of thing. With a Kindle, you can just be, you just pop it up and it pops up right where you were. So for one thing, because the screen is smaller, and again, this is all based on an iPhone, so I don't know. Maybe a Kindle, a page equals a page. But on the iPhone, a page is like a paragraph or two. Maybe maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs. But you're not spending as much time finding your place, even if you had a bookmark. I know that I'm not really explaining this real well, but like when I open a book, even if I bookmarked it, it takes me a minute to get back there to where I was, where this fell into the world of the book. I'm really not explaining this very well. But anyway, with the Kindle, because the pages, so to speak, are so much shorter, it's always right there staring you in the face where you were. Now, that being said, it also gives you a great sense of accomplishment, because I can just, go to the bathroom and, while I'm peeing, I know you guys don't want to know about this, but I can just, read a couple of Kindle pages. It gives you a greater sense of accomplishment, like you're really doing something. Whereas with a dead tree book, it's going to take you a solid 2 to 4 minutes to get through, the 2 pages, and then you flip. With the Kindle, you're more or less constantly flipping. The other upside of the Kindle, which I discovered, and it's also kind of a downside too, but anyway, let's talk about it. You can push a word or a phrase on the Kindle, and it looks it up for you. So, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, being a 80-year-old book, 100-year-old book, in Irish slang, which is, as I've said, in past videos, tougher for me to pick up. I don't know how difficult it is for you other readers to pick up. Not only Irish slang, but also a lot of very archaic Catholic slang. And I'm a Roman Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic. I know a lot of the words, but there was a lot of stuff in here that I was constantly clicking on, and it would be real specific things. Now, of course, none of the words are coming to me, but there's words for the censer that the priest holds and the plate that contains the communion. There's specific words for all this stuff. Now, I don't know that that means they don't use it anymore. Like, I'm sure if you asked a priest or like a super devout Catholic, they could probably, oh yeah, well that's not a censor, that's a whatever it was called. But I felt like I was in over my head, and I was raised Catholic. I can just imagine what somebody else coming across this would feel like. And then the Irish slang, which is some of it, like even Google didn't know. But it's really cool. It's really cool on the one hand to be reading through a book and to be able to just go like that when you don't recognize a word and it tells you. On the other hand, reading Portrait of the Artist of a Young Man probably took me twice as long as it should have or would have if I was dead treeing it, because with a dead tree, I'm really only going to go to the dictionary so many times. Like, a lot of things I'll just take on context. I'll be like, okay, we all do. Like, I admire you if you are that person, boy or girl, man or woman, who goes to the dictionary for literally every word that you don't know. But I rarely do. I only go when it's really like rankling me. Otherwise, I'll just kind of go with context and be like, oh, it's something in this spot here. So the Kindle, it's a dual sword there, because it'll tell you what's going on, but it'll also be constantly breaking up the flow of your book. For the negatives, I've already gone on about this for 5 minutes. I haven't talked about the book barely at all. For the negatives, I have no sense of place when I'm reading with a Kindle. Even the ones that they say your percentage. They all say your percentage complete, and a lot of them say the number of pages that you're going through. Even though Kindle pages are different, it tells you, like, you're on page 24 of Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. But then you'll flip through like 6 or 7 of the Kindle pages before you get to the next one. So that's really off-putting to me. And I know, and this is also just kind of maybe an old world gripe that like the next generation won't even like understand. But I like to know where I'm going with a book and like how many pages is left until the next chapter break or until the next, chapter or the next book or part or however it's divided up. You read a book on a Kindle, you just kind of going with the flow. And it's like you're almost like surprised when there's a break. I mean, yeah, I could sit there and I thought about it. I looked into it. I'm like, okay, I can bookmark this page I'm on, then I flip forward, and maybe I'll eventually get to the chapter break I'm looking for. It takes freaking 2 minutes to do that. You have any regular book, I can always be like, okay, let's say I want to go leave this book and have dinner. How long's the next chapter? Okay, 5 pages, I can do that. Or okay, 20 pages, I'm not going to do it, I'll just stop now. So that's the downside of the Kindle for me, is you really lose your sense of place in the book. I guess I could talk about some of this other bullshit, like, the tactile feel of a book and the smell of a new book. But the truth of it is, it's convenient to carry. There are times I'm a little irritated to be staring at a little tiny screen with a light bulb in my face. But basically, there's ups and downs. So there's the 8 minutes about the Kindle instead of talking about the actual book I'm supposed to be, talking about. But anyway, you won't have to hear any more about that from me. Let's try and run through, one of the greatest works of modern literature real fast in the next minute or two here. The centerpiece of this book, in my humble opinion, is this long, I want to say sermon, but that's not exactly right. I guess it's just kind of a exegesis, just kind of an explanation or speech or what have you, of this priest describing hell. And, the book, it covers a lot of ground. It's a very deep book. It's much more effective, I would think, as a jumping off point for starting Joyce than Finnegan's Wake. I can see where the poetry of prose in Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man leads to Finnegan's Wake, but this is much more accessible. You're hardly ever lost as to what's going on. It is very poetic. It does definitely draw you in with the language, and sometimes it can confuse you, but you're never lost as to the fact that this is a story and, there's characters and, occurrences and what have you. Watch my Finnegan's Wake thing for, not a whole lot of input on that, honestly. So the centerpiece is this long, almost like Dante-ish explication of what's wrong with hell, what's so terrible with hell, to the point that just reading it, like, I just got upset. And clearly, Daedalus, it's a Romana clef, I gather, but Daedalus is the Joyce figure. He's terrified. He repents of everything bad that he's ever done, and he hasn't really done all that bad. He starts out as kind of a straight arrow. He gets scared shitless by this long hell speech. He becomes super straight arrow, and the priests all talk about him becoming a priest. And then he realizes he's actually kind of an agnostic and decides he's going to become a writer. That's the story in, a sentence. I'm not really doing justice to, like I said, the beauty of the language and, the difficulty of the Irish patois and some of the stuff. I guess I have actually gone over a little bit about the book. So I'm in kind of a mediocre feeling about Joyce right now. Finnegan's Wake, obviously, a towering achievement. Completely incomprehensible, but a towering achievement. Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is somewhat slight. I hate to describe it that way. It's not really that slight, but it feels slight, because that's what I'm comparing it to, is Finnegan's Wake. Like, it's not that dense, it's not that hard. It's almost kind of like, I know it's not a novella, but I want to say it feels like a novella in comparison. It's going to be up to Ulysses, kids. The greatest work, according to the modern library of, the 20th century in the English language. I guess Ulysses is going to be the deal breaker. Is Joyce really the greatest genius of all time? Or is he just one of the greats? Time will tell. Thanks for tuning in. Next time we will be talking about Pale Fire by Nabokov. Thanks for tuning in.